What is going on, everybody? Spooky here, bringing back another deck tech video. We are doing Clueology today. Clueology is a Lonis Cryptozoologist deck. This deck is a high-powered deck. I'll go ahead and let you know. There's a couple infinite combos in the deck. The deck can run itself, but it doesn't always. I've been playtesting it and having a lot of fun playing it. Fairly easily you make infinite clue tokens at least, and there's a couple different ways to take advantage of that, and we'll go over that as I go over this deck. So first of all, let's look at Lonis. Lonis says whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, investigate. And she has an activated ability. You can tap, sacrifice X clues. Target opponent reveals the top X cards of their library. You may put a non-land permanent card with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield under your control. That player puts the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. That ability is super powerful. However, that's not what we are focusing for the deck. If you need it, it's there in a pinch, but we are not focusing on actually sacrificing our clues. We're focusing on generating them and using them for value. So let's go ahead and look at the creatures in this list. After I go through all the cards that are in here, I'm going to kind of go over what some of the combos are in the deck, because there are a couple different lines that you can go for. So let's go with the first creature in the deck. We have Academy Manufacturer. This card is so good in this deck. It's such a good card in general, but every time you make a clue, you also make a food and a treasure token. He's a creature himself, so ETB, you'll make a clue, food, and a treasure, which is just absolutely phenomenal in this deck. Up next, we have Ajax and Nev Twincasters. So I had Parallel Lives in the beginning sort of like rendition of this deck, but I felt like having the creature version would be much better, since she does ETB and they do make a clue token with the ETB at least if we don't have anything else. I feel like Ajax and Nev is much better than Parallel Lives in this deck. Avenger of Zendikar, we have a lot of token synergies, so making a bunch of tokens at once makes a lot of sense. At the same time, when Avenger of Zendikar enters, obviously we make a clue token. Beast Whisper. Okay, so cast creatures, creature ETB draw effects is one of our main win cons of the deck. So we try to draw ourselves out by generating infinite mana and casting creatures over and over again, or casting them through a Lurin. And we wouldn't be able to draw our deck without a outlet to do so, and Beast Whisper is one of those outlets. Up next, we have Birds of Paradise. Always need a mana dork. Birds is probably one of the best ones. Followed by Bloom Tender, another mana dork, obviously a great addition. Briar Bridge Patrol. This is 4 mana, 3 and a green for a human warrior. Whenever Briar Bridge Patrol deals damage to one or more creatures, investigate. So it kind of fits on theme there, right? And at the beginning of each end step, if you sacrifice 3 or more clues this turn, you may put a creature from your hand onto the battlefield. So, like I said at the beginning of the video, sacrificing clues is not exactly what we're going for, but that sort of effect, I think, is definitely powerful enough to keep this card in the deck. Say you have Avenger of Zendikar in hand, you don't have enough mana to cast it, you're gonna tap Lonis and sacrifice 3 of your clues and get something out of an opponent's deck, and you're also gonna get an Avenger of Zendikar. So that is always pretty sweet. Cloakwood Swarmkeeper, 1 drop. Whenever a token ETBs, you put a +1/+1 counter on them. I think it's worth playing. I think this could definitely easily get slotted out, but it does become a huge threat pretty quick because you're making a lot of tokens. Dreamstalker. Now this is one of the creatures I was talking about earlier with the Beast Whisper and draw effects. So whenever he enters the battlefield, you return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. You're going to return Dreamstalker. So if you're generating infinite mana, and I'll show you kind of how we can do that later, but if you're generating infinite mana, you can infinitely cast Dreamstalker, and with Beast Whisper, you can infinitely draw. So They go hand in hand. You're making infinite clue tokens, you know, for as far as your deck goes. You can make clue tokens, draw, and cast. Elvish Mystic, another 1-drop dork. We have Eternal Witness. ETBs, we can get a combo piece back from our graveyard into our hand. We have a lot of flicker synergies, so Eternal Witness makes sense in this slot. Ethereal Investigator, this normally investigates 4 times with Lonis out. So ETB, investigate 4. That's pretty sweet. Gives us 4 tokens. You'll see some better synergies later on in the video, but 4 tokens is really good in this deck. And whenever you draw a second card, you make a 1/1 white spirit creature token. That's kind of relevant. I mean, it definitely gives you more blockers, especially since they are flying, but we are really looking at the ETB trigger. Fintorn Elves, another mana dork. We have Graph Mole. In a pinch, you could use Graph Mole if you needed to. I also think this card could easily be slotted out for what we're going for, but I think it was worth the include. It saved my butt from, you know, this guy was swinging lethal at me, but I had a bunch of clues, so I just tapped and sacrificed them with Lonis' ability and gained a bunch of life, and I didn't end up dying to that attack. Jaheira, Friend of the Forest. So this says tokens you control have tapped to add green. We have another card in here that makes your artifacts tap for blue. We'll go over that in a minute. But with this, all of the clues you're making, they tap for green right away, which is very, very good. If you have a draw effect and you have, I don't know, a bunch of dorks in hand, you can just cast and draw. Up next, we have Junkwinder. Junkwinder has affinity for tokens. It costs 1 less for each token you control. So generally, we are aiming to cast this for 2 blue mana. It's a 5/6 serpent. Whenever a token enters the battlefield under your control, you're going to tap a non-land permanent an opponent controls. That doesn't untap during its controller's next untap. This frees up attacks. It frees up them attacking you. Junkwinder, I feel like it's just a good enough slot. It works. It does its job. It's a pretty good card. Up next, we've got Kappa Cannoneer. He has improvise, so he pretty sure improvise is tap your artifacts to cast him. I could be wrong. Yes. Improvise is tap your artifacts to cast him. I'm sorry, I was thinking affinity. He has Ward 4, and whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you put a 1/1 counter on him and he can't be blocked. So ETB, he basically gets a 1/1 counter. If Lonis is out, he gets a 1/1 counter, you make a clue, he can't be blocked. He just works. He fits pretty perfectly in my eyes. We're running Canon Bonder Prodigy. Since we're making our tokens tap for mana a lot, we have a lot of dorks and stuff. Canon works really good. We're also running 38 creatures in the deck, so his activated ability can get us a creature in a pinch. He's a sweet card. I feel like he's definitely worth the include. Running Labman. So this is one of our main win cons in the deck. If we would draw a card while a library has no cards in it, we win the game instead. And like I was saying earlier, if we have infinite draws, we have Labman, we win the game. We have Llanowar Elves, another dork. Lemon Grid Sentinel. This partakes a similar role as Junkwinder does, except you can tap lands. They do untap during the controller's untap step, but I feel like he's good enough to run. Manglehorn. When Manglehorn ETBs may destroy target artifact, he has removal for us. Artifacts your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped. So it's also a little bit of stacks. It's a little bit of removal. We have a lot of flicker synergies, so this does work. We're running Nyx Bloom Ancient, which with Jaheira would make our clues tap for 3 green each, which is really good. Especially if we have Academy Manufactor out and we're making 3 tokens each ETB, we would have 9 mana off of each creature ETB, which is so good. Up next, we have Primordial Sage. Like I said, it is so important to have one of these cast draws or ETB draw triggers. for each creature spell that we cast. It is very important. We need to have them. But next we have Reclamation Sage, another form of removal. This one also hits enchantments. We got Seedborn Muse. Untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap step. So with Seedborn, if we needed to in a pinch, we could draw off of our clues. It makes it a lot easier to do that. So I feel like Seedborn is definitely worth the include. Next, we've got Shimmer Dragon. 4 blue dragon flying. As long as you control 4 or more artifacts, Shimmer Dragon has hexproof. And then you can tap 2 untapped artifacts you control to draw a card. So if we have, let's say, Academy Manufacturer out, right? We cast a creature, it ETBs, we tap 2 of those artifacts to draw a card. That's pretty good, right? Shimmer Dragon has drawn me a lot of cards in the past. I think it works pretty good. Stricken Drake in this deck is basically just a better version of Dream Stalker. When it ETVs, you bounce it back to your hand, but it only costs 1 blue as opposed to a blue and a colorless. Next, we've got Soul the Harvest. Once again, so important to have those ETB draw a card, cast draw a card triggers. This one is another option for that. We have steelfinn Whale, which has affinity for artifacts, so you can cast it for 1 blue, hopefully most of the time. And whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you untap steelfinn Whale. So this is kind of part of an infinite combo in the deck. It was put in here because of that, but it's kind of hard to set up. So realistically, he is just a 1-drop 3/4, and whenever an artifact enters, you untap him. So he works. He does his job. He's what he needs. But I will provide the information on how to do the infinite combo with him. Up next, we've got Temur Sabertooth. Temur Sabertooth is such a good card in this deck because you can bounce creatures back to your hand and recast them and re-get their ETB triggers. That's really what we're looking for in this deck, so Temur Sabertooth is a great one. We have Thassa's Oracle. 2 blue, win the game, basically. When we're casting Thoracle, we should be winning the game. So at this point, we have drawn our deck. We have our deck in our hand. We go, what can we do? I'm going to cast Thoracle, right? Don't do that with a Beast Whisper out, because then you'll try to draw and you'll just lose. So at least have 1 card in your library with a Beast Whisper out when you cast Thoracle, but Thoracle basically says win the game up. Then we have Thassa Deep Dwelling. This is one of those flicker effects that I was talking about. At your end step, you're going to bounce a creature, so we can re-get our ETBs. It's a pretty good include. Thought Monitor. I thought about putting Mold Drifter in this spot, but I feel like Thought Monitor is better in this deck because it has affinity for artifacts. Whenever it ETBs, you draw 2 cards. It's 6 and a blue, but that's reduced by each artifact you control, and hopefully by the time you're casting this, you're casting it for 1 blue mana. We're running Timeless Witness, which is the same thing as Eternal Witness, except it has Eternalize. I'm just realizing Eternalize might have been worded that way on purpose, and I have no idea. Anyway, ETB, you get back a combo piece, you make a clue token. Pretty sweet. We're running Tireless Tracker, so whenever land ETVs, you investigate. Such a good card for this deck. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, you put a 1/1 counter on him. He gets big quick if you're sacrificing your clues, and when land entered the battlefield, you also investigate. Up next, we've got Trophy Mage. I'll go over what Trophy Mage gets once we get to our artifacts. But Trophy Mage is pretty essential, I feel like. Has a good ETB trigger. ETB make a clue, if anything, you know, like worst comes to worst, you're at least making a clue off of this. And next we have Urzo, Lord High Artificer. This is what I was talking about. That said you can tap your artifacts for blue mana. And each time a creature ETBs, you're making an artifact. So whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you generate a blue, basically, is what this card does. Definitely worth the include to me. Urzo is such a good card, especially with infinite mana. You can cast everything in your deck. And that's all the creatures in the deck. Let's move on to our sorceries. We can start with Natural Order. Natural order goes and gets pretty much whatever you need it to. Generally, I try to go and get one of those ETB draws or cast draw trigger effects whenever we cast a creature. That's generally what I try and get, because obviously those are technically combo pieces. Next, we've got neoform. Neoform, I'm still playtesting, okay? I'm not gonna lie, I'm still playtesting neoform. I believe it's worth the include, because you can sack like your Cloakwood Swarmkeeper to go get your Dream Stalker or something, or a Dork to go get your Dream Stalker. And Dream Stalker is such an important piece in the deck. I feel like we're running enough 1-drops. I don't know yet though, so don't quote me on neoform, but I think neoform is worth it to include in this deck. Next, we've got regrowth. We're really looking to hit those combo pieces. We have enough that I feel like you might not need 3 recursion effects, you know, like regrowth effects, but I'm running them. I feel like it's worth the include. I like having all 3 because you never know when you can and can't hit those cards. Next, we're running Sylvan Tudor. Oh, okay, sorry. I'm looking at the sorceries. This is basically Worldly Tutor, but on a sorcery. Search your library for a creature, reveal it, put it on top of your library. Up next to be Instance. We're running an Offer You Can't Refuse. I've been infinitely impressed with this card. Came out in New Capenna. It's super new, but it works really good. Then we've got Fierce Guardianship, obviously a great counter spell. You can cast it for free if you have your commander. Force of Negation, you may exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay its mana cost, counter a non-creature spell, and you exile the spell that was countered. Force of Vigor, you can exile a green card from your hand and destroy 2 artifacts and enchantments. Having a removal is great, and especially having free removal is even better than that. We've got Force of Will, pretty iconic magic card. Pay a life, exile a blue card from your hand to counter a spell. This one counters any spell for free, and I feel like that's worth putting in. Long-term plans. We're kind of limited on our tutors in blue, okay? So long-term plans is something that I feel like is worth running. I think you could replace this for Wars of Invention, I believe is what it's called, because the majority of our combos include artifacts. But I personally like long-term plans. I feel like I'm going to playtest War of Invention soon. So I guess I'll make an update and let you guys know what I think on that card. Up next, we've got Nature's Claim. 1-drop, remove an artifact or enchantment. They gain 4. Definitely worth running. We have Pongify and Rapid Hybridization, which both do the same thing. They destroy a creature and give them a 3/3 for 1 blue mana. Then we've got Swan Song. You counter an enchantment, instant, or sorcery spell for 1 blue mana. They make a 2/2 bird, but that's definitely not the end of the world. Speaking of world, we've got Worldly Tutor, which is the same as Sylvan Tutor, but at instant speed, which makes it infinitely better. Up next, we're going to our artifacts. We're running Altar of the Brood. So, whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent mills a card. So if we are infinitely casting something without a draw trigger on board, we can mill our opponents out and pass the turn and just be fine. 9 times out of 10, they're just going to try and draw and lose the game. There are situations where that would not be the case, but Altar of the Brood, I believe, wins more games than it loses games. Running Cloudstone Curio because Lonis really cares about ETB triggers, and if you cast 2 1-drops over and over again, hopefully generating infinite mana. Say you've got Jaheira and Academy Manufacturer out. Hopefully you're generating infinite mana. If anything, you're just generating infinite cast with Jaheira out. Grinding Station. Okay, so if you're making infinite clues, then you should theoretically be able to mill everybody out with Grinding Station. So whenever you cast, let's say Shrieking Drake in this situation, you cast Shrieking Drake ETBs, it sees 2 triggers. It sees to make a clue token and to return a creature you control to its owner's hand. So you bounce Shrieking Drake to your hand, you make a clue token. Responding to the true clues ETB trigger with Grinding Station, you tap and sacrifice that clue to make somebody mill 3, and then the clue goes away and Grinding Station untaps. And then you can rinse and repeat until everybody's milled out. We're running Inspiring Statuary. I feel like that's worth running. We're making a lot of artifacts, so we can tap our artifacts to help cast our non-artifact spells. We're only running 7 artifacts, even though they're very important ones. I feel like Inspiring Statuary is worth the replay. Mox Amber is free. It's a free mana rock that you can only cast if you have a legendary creature or planeswalker out. And Lonis is a 2-drop, so Mox Amber is definitely included in this deck. We're running Soul Ring. Obviously, what deck doesn't run Soul Ring? I could run more mana rocks if I really wanted to. Maybe some of those cards I said were probably cuttable. If you want to run more mana rocks, I wouldn't blame you to cut those cards and replace them for mana rocks. Running Tamios Journal. At the beginning of your upkeep, investigate, and you can tap to sacrifice 3 clues and Demonic Tutor. This really easily gets your combo pieces. I actually haven't even drawn Tamios Journal once. So other than when I was already winning the game. So that might tell you how consistent this deck is. I've only played 3 or 4 games with the deck, and I've won every single game, so it was definitely worth playing. Next, we've got Allurin. This gives you infinite clues, right? With a Shrieking Drake or a Dreamstalker, right? So you can just cast them infinitely and make infinite clues. If you have a Beast Whisper effect on board, you may draw your entire deck if you'd like. And once you've drawn your entire deck, you can cast Thassa's Oracle and win the game. Allurin fits right in with the deck. It's pretty sweet. I enjoy the card a lot, and I think you guys would as well. Up next, we've got Cryptolithrite. Now, this is what I was talking about with Steelfinn Whale, okay? So you can, theoretically, if you have a Shrieking Drake in hand, you can tap Steelfinn Whale for a blue mana. You cast Shrieking Drake ETBs, you make a clue that untaps Steelfinn Whale, and you bounce Shrieking Drake back to your hand. So that's infinite cast with Shrieking Drake. However, how realistic is that combo? I don't know. It's 3 cards. You're not really tutoring for these cards. These cards are just good all in their own right. So I just feel like you guys should know about the combo being in the deck. Next, we have Guardian Project. Once again, super duper important to get those draw triggers. We're running Intruder Alarm, which untaps all your creatures whenever another creature enters the battlefield. Once again, this goes infinite with a Dreamstalker or Shrieking Drake effect. You just tap for enough mana, even making infinite mana sometimes, and just continuously cast Shrieking Drake. Up next, we've got Ongoing Investigation. This says whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, investigate, which is pretty sweet. And then it also has an activated ability of 1 and a green. Exile a creature from your graveyard, investigate, you gain 2 life. I feel like we're trying to investigate in this deck, right? So we're playing a lot of creatures. We might as well get a little more value with them rather than just their ETB effects. Running Sylvan Library. How can you not run such a great card draw spell in green? I'm actually not running Rhystic Study, which I've just thought about, so that's kind of weird. But that's beside the point. Maybe you can swap Ongoing Investigation with Rhystic, but Ongoing is so on theme. I just really like it. Sylvan Library, you draw 3 cards. If you do, pay 8 life. Draw 2 cards. If you do, pay 4 life. Draw 1 card. Look at the top 3. Rearrange them in any order. That's basically how this card works. I could have just read it, but apparently I'm being lazy today. Up next, we've got Ulvenwald Mysteries. This is 2 and a green enchantment. It says whenever a non-token creature you control dies, investigate. So this can really put you back in the game if somebody casts a board wipe and you just need clues on the field, right? So you have an Inspiring Statuary and somebody casts a Blasphemous Act, and you have, I don't know, 7 non-token creatures. You're going to make 7 clues, which will theoretically pay for 7 of those colorless pips that you have. And that's pretty sweet, right? Now we'll go to our mana base. We've got Breeding Pool, Command Tower, Exotic Orchard. We're running 12 Forest, a Guy's Cradle, 12 Islands, a Misty Rainforest, a Tropical Island, an Urza's Saga, which can go get Altar of the Bread or Soul Ring or even Mox Amber. And you have a Maya Coast. I think we're going to get into some of the combo pieces and kind of run them down and show you guys how they work. I'm going to go ahead and start a play test here. Oh my, that's a good hand, I think. It's a really good hand, I think. But that's not what we're here for. I'm going to... I'm only going to run a couple of these by. Hopefully you guys are smart enough and can figure out everything So we're going to run by Allurin. If I can type in my type box. We're going to run by Shrieking Drake. And we'll also have a Lonis on the battlefield. So say we have, some lands, right? We have Shrieking Drake in hand. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and put Grinding Station. Well, first we'll represent this, okay? So Allurin says, when any player may cast a creature card with total casting cost 3 or less whenever he or she could play an instant and without paying its mana cost. So for us, that means we can cast Shrieking Drake for free, make a clue token, and bounce Shrieking Drake back to our hand, right? So we are making a clue token every single time that we cast Shrieking Drake for free. So we have infinite clue tokens. Now let's take this a step further. Let's say we have a Grinding Station on the field, okay? Let's say we cast Shrieking Drake for free, and we have this clue token out. In response to the cast, we can tap and sacrifice this clue token and mill, let's say on player C, we're going to mill player D for 3 cards. This is going to ETB, and I'm going to make another clue token. This artifact will enter the battlefield and untapped Grinding Station. And then rinse and repeat, we can do this to mill out our opponents. Now let's say we don't have Grinding Station, right? We've got a Beast Whisperer effect. So let's find a Beast Whisperer. Same thing. We can cast and draw infinitely, okay? So same effect, different result, right? Either way, if your opponents don't have a counterspell in hand and you don't have, and especially since we're running a couple, right? We can have backup for our things. But if an opponent doesn't have a counterspell in hand, Shrieking Drake pretty much wins you the game every time. So I guess let's throw in a different kind of effect. We'll show off... Whoops. Let's see. We'll show off my favorite combo in the deck. Steelfinn Whale. This is not the most powerful one, but it is my favorite. Say we've had this Steelfinn Whale out on the battlefield for over a turn. Shrieking Drake is in our hand. Can tap us for a blue, cast Shrieking Drake. On ETB, we make a clue token, and that untaps this, and we draw, and we bounce this back to our hand. So that's another way to make infinite clue tokens, right? It's actually a way to make infinite mana with Allurin on board, so you can infinitely draw your deck that way. So I didn't even think about that part when I started doing this. Let's see. Without steelfinn will, without, I'll learn. Let's bring in, what is this card called again? It's an enchantment. Da, 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 da. Hang on, I'm sorry. My brain is going on a fart mode. Intruder alarm, right? Wasn't shuffle. So we have Cryptolith, right? We have Lonis. We have Intruder alarm. We're gonna tap Lonis for a blue and cast Stricken Drake. Same thing, guys. Rinse and repeat. Make a clue token. Untap Lonis, right? If we have a learn out, that makes infinite mana, which would make infinite card draw. Say we have an academy manufacturer and we don't have this out, right? So we're making 3 tokens a cast. That would make us infinite mana, infinite clues, infinite food. So we would have infinite card draw, infinite life, and infinite mana. I'm kind of rolling through all the combos in the deck. Obviously, after you've drawn your deck, you're going to win with Thoracle or Labman. Altar of the Brood mills your opponents out. I believe we're getting pretty much to the end of this video because I'm running out of things to say. I feel like that was a pretty good deck tech, you know? Urza, such a good card in general, but in this deck especially, Urza is fantastic. Remember that. All of your clues tap for blue. With Cannon out, all of your clues tap for 2 blue. With Cannon and Nyx Bloom Ancient out, all of your clues tap for 4 blue. It's insane. I did that in the last game I was playing, and it ended up being absolutely awesome. And I believe that's pretty much it, guys. If you guys enjoyed the video, please let me know. Let a brother know. Like and subscribe. You know, I still feel like that's kind of cringe to say, but maybe I should start saying it more often. I hope you guys enjoyed the deck. I enjoyed playing it. It was a lot of fun. And as always, guys, have a good one.